Hey there, this is Melky, your host, and I welcome you to another episode of Meaningful Conversations with Talk Coz, a podcast where words are more than just sounds, they are bridges. Stories have the power to reveal, to challenge, to heal. And few storytellers do this with as much depth and honesty as Geeta Sahai, a writer, an award winning filmmaker, and a mental health advocate. Her work, spanning fiction, nonfiction, and film, brings to light the realities we often ignore, such as feminism beyond slogans, the silent scars of domestic violence, and the shifting roles of women in modern society. In this episode of Meaningful Conversations with Talk Coz, we dive into these unspoken truths. So prepare yourself not for answers, but for questions that linger long after the conversation ends. Because here, we don't just speak, listen, we feel, we reflect. Welcome to Meaningful Conversations with Talk Coz, Geeta. How do you feel today?
Thank you for inviting me, first of all, Melky. I'm obliged, grateful to you for inviting me for this meaningful conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you for accepting my invitation, ma'am. And it's a pleasure and it's an honor to have you on my podcast on this episode where we are talking about women empowerment, especially on the occasion of International Women's Day. So, ma'am, you have shaped narratives that don't just entertain but confront. So, I would like to start with a question as feminism, which is very common in today's world. Feminism, not the hashtag, but the lived reality. So, in your journey as a storyteller, as a mental health advocate, how have you seen the definition of feminism evolve, and where do you believe it still struggles to resonate deeply, especially in our society?
Well, that's a very important question, in fact, you have asked. And it has changed over the years largely. We had so many forms of feminism, like ecofeminism, then intersectional feminism, then cultural feminism. So many forms of feminism has been there. Then postmodern queer feminism also, so which is there right now. So it has evolved, but to me, if you ask me, like how it has been misunderstood or rather oversimplified, like in my journey, I've seen some people view this movement that seeks women's superiority or female superiority rather than gender equality. And some assume that feminism is no longer necessary because all legal rights have been bestowed upon them. But to me, feminism is much more deeper than that. It is asking for gender pay gap, which is there, asking for reproductive rights, and asking for social expectations that continue to limit women's choices. It is largely, if I may say so, I understand and I would like to take feminism when a woman has a right to make a choice. And what do I mean by when I say women has a right to make a choice? Choice to live the way she wants to live, choice to be with the partner with whom she wants to be, choice to live without fear, having courage to walk out of toxic relationship, and most importantly, which I also faced, I might as well share that while asking for anything like a loan or something financial thing, a woman is always asked about her husband's financial health. She may be earning, but it is always uh, put in front, like the people ask, how much can I have, can you share your spouse's financial help? So this question is never addressed to a man. A man is never asked about his wife's financial health. But a woman is always asked about that. Why that? Though the legal rights are there, but it is not been respected by various institutions. And I think women should also be taken into consideration to make financial decisions by the family. We may live in cosmopolitan. Here, the scenario might be different or might not be different. But in semi urban or semi rural areas or rural areas, it is not that. A woman is never considered or asked questions about or expected to answer about financial matters. Why that's so? I would like to understand feminism in the way that we must have equal rights about pay and all, which I have mentioned, but about all these things also, and not to be considered as a second person to a man. If a man is not never asked about his wife's financial health, then why is a woman asked whenever she goes out to any institution or even to apply for any government thing that her husband's name is to be there? Why not father's name or the parents' name are there? Though it is written there, but person who comes, he always prefers to ask, write about your husband, not about your father. Why that? So you see, sensitization and equality, education about gender equality has to begin somewhere from these things. Then only a woman can learn to respect herself also. When I say learn to respect, because half the time women are not respecting their own self, their own body, their own thinking. I mean, I'm against the social, cultural, religious custom also in marriage, which is here in India, is that Kanyadan. I don't believe in that. How can you
Mm-hmm.
give dan? How can you give your daughter in dan to the spouse who she is about to marry, to a man who she is about to marry? She is not a table chair that you can give in dan or donation. Though it's a religious, cultural tenet over there, like, and people feel very great if they have done this. But to me, it doesn't appear like that. To me, I think there should be a voice raised about it. And that's what equality to me is: equality to have the choice to do what one wants to do, equality to be treated equally in any circle or any sphere of life.
You have touched upon a lot of topics from corporate to culture to tradition to society, and we'll try to delve into that one by one. I really appreciate what you said that in this society, feminism is seen as women's right above men. But why we always have to compare that who is better? Why not equal? So, yes, feminism is about that women should move freely in society without being asked any questions. What you talked about, that these questions about financial health, it reminds me of one incident. One of my friends, she went for an interview in a company, or I think it was an institution. And the question they asked her was, when are you getting married? Or what's your plan to get married? You never ask that question to a man. So in this society, it's very important to have the gender sensitization, the awareness of that, and the understanding that challenge the existing gender roles.
All these things can only come when, from the very beginning, it is taught, or gender sensitization workshops are being held at various places and they are encouraged. They should be made mandatory because law has given us everything. But half the time, we women do not execute them. And half the time, the people who are sitting there, the men who are sitting there, they do know that the law has given, but they do not want to execute those legal terms for whatever reasons, maybe because of patriarchy or patriarchal outlook with which they have been brought up, or they do not believe in this, or they think a woman is always considered to be somebody who has to have a partner in life or a spouse in life, and not without that. So it's much better to take husbands or the spouses or the partners credentials.
Right. So you said the law is there, but I believe it's more, and you also said that it's a societal structure that allow it to persist. There are a lot of women who are often struggling silently, be it gender roles, be it inequality. So, your narratives, your work often touch on the silent struggles women face, especially when it comes to gender sensitization or domestic violence. What nuances do you feel are still underrepresented? And you have narrated a lot of stories. So, and you have your own work for the empowerment of women. Or so how can storytelling break through societal structure?
Storytelling is a very important tool, in fact. And, we all remember there was a campaign long time ago, Bell Bajao campaign, through which we all came to know about domestic violence. I'm talking particularly in the context of India. And that campaign really shook us. I think a decade ago, sometime quite a long time ago, it was there. Like recently, I wrote an article about domestic violence, and half the time, women themselves they accept it. For half their lives, they accept it because they have been brought up in such an atmosphere where they are being taught, if they go and complain to their mothers, the answer is, this is all right, this happens in marriage. Should it happen? The question is this. So they continue, these survivors, they continue to, I'm calling them survivors because they survive such abuse. And they continue to live in any relationship. They continue to live in fear. They continue to live in financial dependence. Societal stigma is there because if they leave, the stigma will be there. A lot of stigma will be there. Still, it is there. At least it is there in their mind. If it's not by other people, but since they've been brought up in this atmosphere, it is there in their mind that if they leave, uh, they'll be ostracized, or how can they depend upon their parents? It takes time for them to come to realize that they have a life without anybody else, also their spouses also, who is toxic. And how can one bring about changes? It is primarily through awareness. Sometime back there was a film called Thappad in India, which was quite popular, and which showed this
Hmm.
violence, domestic violence, though it was just one thappad, one slap. Thappad in English is slap. So, but yet it did bring about a hidden nuance about that. And but still a lot of women do continue to suffer the emotional violence, which is very very difficult to know. Even for a woman herself, it is difficult to know that she is being gaslighted, that she is being made to understand that she is inferior, and that everything, that if a husband is abusive, it's because of her. That's what gaslighting is all about. The victim herself starts believing in that, and that's what women starts doing it. And it takes a long time for them to understand that it is a manipulation by their partner. By the time they realize, 10, 15 years go by easily, I can tell you. Through my research I have done, a lot of women do not realize. By the time they realize, 10, 15, 20 years go by, when they realize, oh, I've been living in hell, I've been living in toxic atmosphere, because they have lost all their self confidence, because they have lost all their self esteem, confidence just, it goes out of the window, and they start believing in what their partner is telling them. Long time ago, if you remember, there was a film, I am forgetting the name of the actors, but it was very 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 popular. Somewhere it came in 1950s or 60s, I think. The film's name was Gaslight, and that
Hmm.
shows how the male character gaslights his wife into believing that she is going insane. And it takes a lot of courage for the other person to come to make her realize that what she's thinking, because the character herself also begins to believe that she is going towards insanity. And that happens in actual life also. I've met a lot of women who believe that I cannot do this because I don't have funds, or I don't have capability to do it. Though in their younger life they may have topped in their debating context, but right now they do not, they've forgotten all what they had done in their past avatar. They have started believing that they do not have any talent or capability to earn a livelihood without being supported by their partner. The gaslighting is being done in a very, very subtle manner. All these
Hmm.
things are there, it exists. But how
Hmm.
to make society aware of it, or women aware of it, that depends upon largely upon media advocacy, and through stories, and through maybe films and culture, which all comes under media. It has to be through that only that one comes to realize that, oh, even I am a victim of that. Even I faced that. Recently, one of my stories was the garden she maintained. It was about emotional violence. I had sent it to an international contest and it was awarded. A woman read it because I had posted on Instagram the link. So she on Insta she posted, "Thank you for this story because even I am right now undergoing this." So you see, a lot of women do go through that. Either they are not aware or they do not have courage, which we talked in the earlier question. What is feminism to me? Feminism to me is this also, to have courage to move out of a toxic relationship. Lot of women do not have courage, maybe because of the financial dependency, maybe because financial dependency is one of the major causes of not taking action. One begins to enjoy or live in that toxic comfort zone, I say.
I think it's again societal structure how that allow it to persist, and it becomes very essential to challenge these narratives which are beyond legal frameworks, especially through cultural mediums, through education.
Education in the real sense. Let's
Right.
not talk about literacy.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah, yeah.
talk about education. A person who might be even seventh standard pass or eighth standard pass might be educated, but may
Right.
not be PhD. But a PhD scholar might not be educated. You see.
Exactly. Mhm. Yeah, education is not degrees or in which school or better school you're studying. Is how you treat other person. For me, that's education. So it reminds me like the manipulation that goes from a partner to another partner, and it happens in society. So, ma'am, I grew up alongside women. I have two sisters and my mother, and so I grew up with three women at my home. So when a woman goes through a menstrual cycle, it is considered as a problem. It's common like people say that, hey, that's a lady's problem, but that's not a problem. That's how you came in this world. And if that does not happen, then it's a problem. And if you go to especially in our country, if you go to buy a sanitary napkin, they will wrap it up in a black paper.
Hmm.
But why? Because the society sees it as a problem. So it's a social structure that allows to persist this gender roles. So I would say that women have achieved their liberty, but there's long way to go. And the role of women in modern society is kind of romanticized as a blend of tradition and a progress. So uh, it's so there are women who are progressing and there are women who are like totally underprivileged. They're not able to come out of this limitation. So how do you dissect this paradox in your work? It means, what truths have you uncovered that challenge the conventional narratives?
Well, it depends upon women also, Melky, because the thing that I feel and think is that half the time women are also responsible for their imprisonment in
Hmm.
societal structures. They do
Hmm.
not question if they may be in a very good job before marriage, but after marriage, if their family requires it, they do abandon it, they do leave it. My question is, why can't they be midway in between? It's fine if you want to leave it. If it's your choice, then fine. But if somebody has to sacrifice so that the couple stays together, then it is expected from women to leave her job and not from the man. Though he may be earning lesser than her, but it is not expected from him to leave the job, but it is expected from the wife to leave the job. And women do it happily because maybe they are made like that. I do not know, like it is but they give up everything for the happiness of the family, leaving their own security and happiness. With society moving at such a rapid pace, and you know that a lot of separation and divorce cases have risen up. Some people blame it on women that it's because of their ambition that so many divorces are happening. But is it really? I may ask you, Milky, like, is it really because of that? Or is it because of something else?
I would say it's because the women got more awareness. In the past, women would rather live in a toxic relationship, in a toxic family, because kuch to log kahenge. people
Hmm.
will say, what people will say, what my relatives will say. But nowadays, the narratives have changed because of feminism, because of women empowerment, and the awareness that women have achieved by themselves. So it's not the ambition of the women, because it's the role, the gender role that have been imposed on women, that okay, women are supposed to be at home.
Yes. So we come to the, like, you asked me, like, how women, like, gender roles, in fact, are they defined or not? I really don't know that where to draw the line exactly. But for society, for women and men, I think the awareness should be there, particularly in men. Boys should be brought up differently, not like, I mean, to give you an example, like, let me go back a little. Like,
Hmm.
when a daughter and a son are there, and whenever the family returns, it is always a daughter who is asked to go and get a glass of water from the kitchen, and never ever the son.
Hmm.
So you see, the discrimination begins from there. I think even in a family, which gradually some families are doing that, that's because of the awareness of the women of that family, that they ask their sons also to do the job. But it is not happening that much. It is still a daughter is expected to help the mother in kitchen, and not the boy, unless and until the boy himself expresses that even he would like to make do cooking. So it's very rarely. So these discriminations, they begin within the family, and they go on and take up very major roles once during their adulthood, when they come, because they start believing in their superiority. The men, I think, they start believing in that. So when a woman comes to their house, when they get married or their partner, so it is doesn't become like that. Equality is not there, because they think it is not, they are not supposed to do that, and it's a woman's job. So when we talk about gender roles, when we talk about feminism, so all these things, they do come under that umbrella. And I think more than women, it is men are to be made aware of what feminism actually is.
Exactly. Yes, I would totally agree to that. So, if you were to rewrite the story of womanhood in today's world, be it families, be it societal structure or a workplace, what elements would you keep? What elements would you discard or reimagine?
I feel that one should have the freedom. The son and daughter should be brought up equally, and even at home, they should be given equal importance. It should not be that the father discusses the financial health only with the son and not with the daughter. I think daughter should be equally involved. Though you see, the legal rights are there for the daughter to inherit, but how many families do give it willingly?
Hmm.
Often it is daughter, they ask for their rights in property or in their financial help. It is not the other way around. So that change should be brought about in family, because till those changes are done, I think it's very difficult, because families, from individual to families to society, that's what the structure is, right? Society to communities, to communities to society, to a nation. That's what the structure is like. So I think these
Yes.
changes are very necessary in thinking as well. And if you're asking me what is to be discarded, I think abuse. I think abuse of any kind of power, gender, being a man. So I have more power than you. Power strata in workplace. Of course, women should also fight for their own rights. Women should also come out and not be so gullible enough to be taken in by the societal rituals and customs. I think, because I personally feel there should be questions asked about rituals, and
Hmm.
a lot
Yes,
of rituals
absolutely.
are very against women's identity.
Yes, yes. So the education begins at home, like you stated. So on this International Women's Day, what message would you like to give to women who feel like they're not able to break the chain of this manipulation of this gender role, or the women who are in imprisonment of their own mindset?
To live without fear, Melky. That's the to live with their own choices and to live without fear. Lot of things, like you had asked me about the domestic violence and the emotional violence, women do not come out of it because of the fear also. fear of loneliness, fear of being alone, fear of how to earn the living. And all these things are there in their mind. And so one has to discard that. In my latest novel, that is The Silent Symphony, which is, I have tackled this emotional violence. So, can I read just two lines from it?
Yes, of course.
Just a second. See, the background is that this woman who was facing emotional violence has come out, and some another man has given her shelter. So next day she's staying there because she had nowhere else to go. So there was a knock at the door. So she gets very panicky because she had been living in fear throughout for nearly 5 to 10 years with that person who was abusive, and she didn't know about it. So I'll just read one para of it. The character, the male character who has given her shelter, his name is Sagar. And before closing the door, he again warned her not to knock at the door. Somebody was there at the door who was knocking violently. He closed the door softly, turned and saw Deepthi flicking at her nails, peeling the edges. Walking gently, he approached Deepthi. It's not nice to live in fear. It will kill you, he whispered in her ears. In that moment, Deepthi felt exposed, as if her inner world, the one she had carefully hidden behind layers of composure, had been stripped bare. She had been living in fear for so long that she had forgotten what it was to live without fear. So that's because a lot of women, they forget what it is to live without fear. So on this day, I would just like to say to live without fear and to have courage to stand by your choices you make in life, and have courage to make a choice in your life to do what you want to do, and uh, not to be dictated by others. And of course, for like for men, I would, and for organization, I would just like to say that the law is on women's side, and they should learn to respect that and not make a woman feel when she comes for some paperwork to be done, some financial matters to be done, to always ask her about her partner, on her financial health, and not on a partner's financial health. Because a man is never asked, like, what is your wife's financial uh, ITR or something like that. But a woman is always asked, which I think is making her feel, oh, I'm worthless. I'm nothing without him. And that makes her live in fear. That makes her live in dependency. That makes her lose her self confidence. That makes her lose her self esteem.
Hmm. I would also like to add to that, especially for organizations and people in society, stop asking question, when are you getting married?
Yes.
That's none of their business. Yeah, because they think that when you are solo, you are vulnerable,
Yeah.
or you can't be independent. But I would like to comment on that excerpt that you read from your book. That's a very beautiful narration. I will share the link for that book in the show notes so that people can gift their partners, their sisters, their girlfriends on this Women's Day. So let's do a rapid fire round with you.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you 5 questions,
Mhm.
and you have only 5 seconds. What comes to your mind first,
Okay.
just answer that. No logical thinking. All right.
Hmm.
So are you ready?
Yeah, yeah.
So one word that defines feminism for you.
Fearless.
Very good. A book or film that changed your perspective on gender roles.
I think Thappar,
Hmm.
the film.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting movie.
Hmm.
Who is the woman who inspired you to continue with this work, to be a voice for the female?
Not many people know about her, but I really like Shashi Deshpande's novels and her life, because they are always about women's right, women's gender roles, and the inner conflict which anybody faces, because they do not come out of the inner conflict. And that's what she traces in her literature.
Okay, the next question is patriarchy in one sentence.
Being bullish, being suffering from inferiority complex, but trying to show that I am powerful.
Is it hope or rage? Which one drives change faster?
A hope.
Hmm. All right, very well. So, Geeta, thank you for your courage, for your voice, for daring to weave stories that don't just entertain but transform. Thank you for being here and have a meaningful conversation with me.
Thank you for inviting me and thank you for having a lively conversation. And I hope that women start believing in themselves because feminism is not about what others say. Feminism starts with oneself. Feminism is having courage. Feminism is having hope. Feminism is having to live fearlessly with one's own belief and ideas.
Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing your
you.
insight. And there it is, the uncomfortable truths, the hope, the unresolved questions. Today's episode wasn't about conclusions, it was about peeling back the layers because real conversations don't end, they echo. To our listeners, carry these words with you. Question them, let them challenge your perspective, and above all, continue the conversation because change begins when silence breaks. Until next time, this is Meaningful Conversations with Talk Coz, where words matter and voices linger.